Once you've sorted your palate, how do you sort your mind? Because it might be that you go through that detox and you start to readjust your taste buds to the whole food. But perhaps you still have those, what I call them, the diet demons, right? That come and haunt you at night and tell you to go and raid the kitchen cabinet.
You need to set yourself up for success. It's just like the idea of packing your gym bag and putting it right beside your bed before you go to sleep, so that when you kind of wake up groggy and you're a little bit tired, that's one less barrier to holding you back from going to the gym. And it's the same with your cupboard, your refrigerator. You want to set yourself up for success. Get rid of the things that are the weak points, the devils, if you will, or the demons, I think you said, that are sitting there in your cupboard and in your refrigerator. And you know what? If you want those things, that's okay on occasion. Set it up, tell yourself what you need to do to earn that, make the occasion, and go get it outside of your home. Don't leave it in your home.
Welcome back to the Shawn Show. I am delighted to introduce you today to Shawn Wells. Shawn is a globally acclaimed nutritional biochemistry expert, also known as the world's greatest formulator. With over 2 decades of experience, Shawn has formulated more than 1,100 products worldwide. Shawn is a registered dietitian, certified sports nutritionist, and on a more personal note, having had the pleasure of meeting Shawn in Finland, he's also one of the world's greatest hugger. Shawn, welcome to the Shawn Show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on today. I was reflecting on how long it's been since we met in Finland at the Biohacking Summit. It was such high energy, and it was wonderful to finally meet the man behind the legend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I do think you do outstanding work in our biohacking community. And I was wondering if we could start off by getting our audience to know a little bit more about your background and what has actually put you on the track or on the journey of health optimization, Shawn.
Oh, wow. There's a lot there. I'm a biochemist, a sports nutritionist, a fellow in the International Society of Sports Nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian and was a chief clinical dietitian for a decade in acute and long-term care. Published author of the Energy Formula biohacking book. That's a best-selling book internationally. And I've spoken on stages in more than 60 countries. I've formulated over 1,000 products, patented over 30 unique ingredients, helped 11 companies in food, beverage, supplements, and biohacking go to sale. So that's my resume. But where my passion came from was I had a very difficult childhood with bullying, abuse, etc., and I became morbidly obese. I was suffering from body dysmorphia and disordered eating, extreme depression, suicidal thoughts. My weight was very high. Like right now, I'm at 220 pounds. I went up to about 300 pounds and got as low as 150 pounds. So this is a massive variances in my body, going from someone who would binge eat to then being someone who was completely anorexic to even orthorexic with working out. Ended up suffering physically with, not only just the depression, but it started to show itself in Epstein-Barr syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, Hashimoto's. I had brain tumors. I had probably more than 20 different surgeries related to hips, knees, shoulders. I had 2 discs replaced in my neck. All of this was just the stress I was putting my body under. And so biohacking slash optimization led me down a path of healing. And then even after that, I took it up another step with some plant medicine experiences that really helped me discover self-love.
Mm. Can we dive a little deeper, Shawn, into your weight loss journey? And before we start to talk about your weight loss, can we start by talking about your weight gain? Because that's how a journey starts, isn't it? What happened there? And when did you start to decide you wanted to make a shift? And what were some of the behavior that led you to that point?
Yeah, so going through my childhood that I went through with, the bullying, the abuse, losing my brothers, running away and getting kicked out, just a very difficult, traumatic childhood. Food was my drug of choice. I didn't have access to anything else. So it was Oreos, it was cookies, it was cereals, it was candy bars. And this was how I gained so much weight so fast. And, my body was holding on to that weight because I was in fight or flight all the time. And really, there was no way out. And then I ended up becoming obviously very sick with my immune system kind of crashing as a result as well. So it definitely put on considerable weight, really doubling my weight in short time.
Hmm. And was it a light bulb moment for you, or was it the diagnosis that made you think, okay, I need to go on a different track?
I ended up having a passion for basketball, of all things, just shooting around and really enjoying that. And that actually got my body moving. It was one of the only things I enjoyed. I actually just would shoot around often by myself. And then I started getting good enough that I started playing with some other people. That helped. But it was in college when I actually started working out and going to the gym. I started using protein and creatine and some of these supplements, and I had massive body transformation. Started putting on muscle, lost almost all the weight, that I really started to feel very confident. And I ended up going to a medical doctor and being pretty excited about it. And he ended up telling me, he drew out like a lifeline after, like, I told him how exciting this was. And this was crazy. Like, he drew out this lifeline, between 20 and 80 and said, why not be happy between here and here? I was like, what? Like, this doctor just gave me permission to pursue my passion. And it was crazy for me. And I really did. Like, it changed everything. Him telling me that gave me license to just go do what I loved, because this was like my hero's journey. Like, I had a massive body transformation. I had always believed in the power of supplements. I was reading all the magazines and books I could get my hands on. I started being like an expert for other people around me that were like wondering how I went through this transformation. And while I was in school for business, I was like, I really want to do this nutrition thing. And so I ended up going back and getting all my prereqs and then getting into UNC Chapel Hill for my master's, studying nutrition and biochemistry, and getting my RD. And that's where it all started.
And weight is really on the rise nowadays. Obesity is on the rise more than ever. What do you think, in your expert opinion, are some of the most common behavior that are leading us as a society to see more and more metabolic disease and obesity?
It's so many different things. I feel like we're disconnected from each other, from nature, from ourselves. We're just distracted. We're no longer connected. And the longer that we're distracted on our cell phones, on TikTok, on Instagram, that we're not actually having deep personal connections, that we're not connecting with ourselves through meditation, through prayer, we're not connecting in nature by being out in nature. We're feeling the impact of that. We're feeling the loneliness. And then we're dopamine fixed on all of these things. And instead of having kind of sustained dopamine and sustained serotonin of through that deep quality connection, we have very superficial, fleeting connections and really addictive behaviors. And that addictive behavior is not only playing out with TikTok and Instagram, but it's playing out in porn, it's playing out in video games, it's playing out in the food we eat. Again, this is food that's engineered to have a high bliss point and trigger you to have food gasms where you have dopamine and serotonin released. And it's even more insidious than that. Like they'll, for example, like with some of these beverages and foods, they'll make them very bland on the back end so that you keep wanting to eat more and keep feeling like the bliss on the front end and then the kind of disappointment on the back end. And so you overeat these foods and it overrides what's called satiety. And so there's so many things like that right now, loneliness is at an all-time high, despite the population being at an all-time high. That we don't feel like we have purpose anymore. We're not living that Japanese concept of ikigai that supercentenarians and blue zones have. We don't have that purpose because we feel overwhelmed because everyone on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook are living their best lives, but nobody's living their best life. Everything is filtered and faked. And unfortunately, like this is a lot of the mindset that's going on right now. So to me, doing the digital detox is important. Limiting your time on social media is important. Choosing the social media that you see when you're on, Instagram or what have you is important. Just, choose things that actually educate, uplift, or things that are dramatic or, entertaining or certainly bordering on pornographic. I think those are things that we can avoid. And that goes for our food too, is eating whole food, eating nutrient dense food. The closer the food is to its kind of raw or more original or living state, I believe the better. We're eating food that's days, months, years old and ultra processed, and the vitality is not there in the food. And so it's no surprise that we ourselves are not feeling the vitality of as Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. And right now we're starving. We're eating so many calories, but we're starving for quality nutrients.
I know. And when I hear stories from clients about night cravings or mid-afternoon snacking, it's not often the case that you snack on a juicy steak or a butternut squash. It's often the tub of ice cream, the packet of crisp, or the bars and the chocolates and the ultra processed food item. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how to soothe or avoid some of those cravings naturally? Because one thing that I admire so much about you, Shawn, is you really are a role model of not only losing weight in a way that is healthy and sustainable, but also not putting it back on, because a lot of people struggle with that yo-yo effect. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I think there is a detox that is necessary. Just like when I was talking about the digital detox, we have this obsession with having the phone in our hand, right? Like, you see someone at an airport or on the airplane, like they can no longer interact with the person beside them. They can't look up, they can't read a book anymore. It's just you're like going through your phone, like as they call it, like doom scrolling now. Right? Like that's that just endless scrolling and you're just locked into it through addiction. It's just like what I was talking about with a Mountain Dew and some of these beverages that are literally putting all the flavor on the front end, nothing on the back end. And you'll watch someone unscrew the cap, drink, screw the cap on, unscrew the cap, drink, screw the cap on, unscrew the cap. And it's like literally like this addiction, right? Of like over and over, picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. Same with the phone. So we have to do this with food. We need to detox. We need to get away from these hyper palatable, over processed, ultra processed foods that have these engineered bliss points, these food gasms in them, and get back to tasting real food. We no longer can sense like the nuance in food, like that buttery texture or that certain fruity acid that's there. We're just adding salt and sugar to it, and all these different things, these sauces, and we can't realize like what's actually present, all the flavor, all the abundance, all the nutrition that's there in the food. So if you can start moving your palate towards whole food, and I encourage you to start eating organic, start eating more raw, so you can pick up on some of these, finer points in the food. That when you actually have these high bliss point, engineered, over processed, ultra processed foods, you're like, bah, this is way over salted. This is way over flavored. This is way over sweet. And it's disgusting to you. It's all conditioning. So it's a question of, can you decondition yourself to get back to what is actually healthy and supportive to your body and brain?
And once you've sorted your palate, how do you sort your mind? Because it might be that you go through that detox and you start to readjust your taste buds to the whole food. But perhaps you still have those, what I call them, the diet demons, right? That come and haunt you at night and tell you to go and raid the kitchen cabinet. So what is the shift there that needs to happen at a more holistic mind-body level?
Well, you need to set yourself up for success. It's just like the idea of packing your gym bag and putting it right beside your bed before you, go to sleep, so that when you kind of wake up groggy and you're a little bit tired, that's one less barrier to holding you back from going to the gym. And it's the same with your cupboard, your refrigerator. You want to set yourself up for success. Get rid of the things that are the weak points, the devils, if you will, or the demons, I think you said, that are sitting there in your cupboard and in your refrigerator. And you know what? If you want those things, that's okay on occasion. Set it up, tell yourself what you need to do to earn that, make the occasion, and go get it outside of your home. Don't leave it in your home. Do not sabotage yourself. If you plan for it, you earn it, you achieve it, you enjoy it, and it's outside of your home and it's an experience, great. That's amazing. You can do those things on occasion. It's not good when it's sitting there in your refrigerator, in your cupboard, and you can reach for it at any weak point.
And you become numb to it. And oftentimes you do it mindlessly, right? Like, how much pleasure are you genuinely getting out of that prepackaged bar? Or is it more of a habit cycle you've got yourself into?
Exactly. And so a lot of times these foods aren't even that good, or we don't like them that much. We're just eating them because. And that's what I like when I have what you'd want to call a cheat day or something like that, which I don't even really like that term. But it's going to be something that I truly enjoy, that I like, that I planned on, that I'm going to earn, and I'm going to fully be present for and enjoy, and then move on from.
Mm-hmm.
And having stuff that's like, there's cakes that are just not that good, right? If you're at a like kind of work office party, and someone has cake, and it's like, have your cake if you enjoy it and it's worth it. And if it's not, don't have it. It's those kinds of things, and wrapping your mind around it is like, it's the thing where I don't want to beat myself up because I had cake. I want to enjoy it. And I also don't want to just have cake whenever there's cake. I want to enjoy it. So, that's the thing. Don't beat yourself up if you have it, but also don't force yourself to eat something that you don't enjoy. That doesn't make sense. So you need to learn how to live in that balance.
Could you tell us a little bit more, Shawn, about your experience and expertise around metabolic health and how we are now as a society around our metabolic health? Where have we gone?
Well, metabolic health is truly everything. Behind all disease is metabolic health. I'd say 99% of disease is not genetic in nature, it's metabolic in nature, meaning we have control over it. And that diet and exercise and our behaviors are core to nearly all disease states, and including aging. Our biological versus chronological aging. We are aging faster than we should. Some people look a lot younger than their age, than their chronological age, but many people look a lot older than they should because of smoking, poor diet, lots of stress, lack of sleep, etc. And these things affect the mitochondria, which is, the source of cellular energy, and it's going to affect, therefore, metabolic health. Our metabolism, essentially behind the metabolism is that cellular energy, which is the mitochondrial function that's producing ATP, that currency for the body for energy. Adenosine triphosphate, these high energy phosphates are liberated to create that energy to run the body. And many of us are in a state of what's called ICE, insufficient cellular energy states, where we don't have enough mitochondria, one, and we don't have enough ATP being produced from the mitochondria. So we're in a shortfall, and that's creating a propensity towards nearly all disease, PCOS, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, myocardial infarction, stroke, you name it. All these things are metabolic in nature. And again, we're aging faster than we should biologically. Our telomeres are shortening, our sirtuin genes aren't activated, these anti-aging genes. And we don't have the resilience that we once had years ago. We're very weak. We are fragile, not anti-fragile. We're easy to kill, not hard to kill. We lack resilience.
Can you tell us a little bit some of the signs and symptoms that you might be on the road of a potential metabolic disease? So before you get that big diagnosis, before you get that type 2 diagnosis, that cancer, that stroke, that heart attack, what are some red flags or alarm that you might be heading towards that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. And while we can't measure mitochondrial function directly, easily, we can look at glycation, inflammation, and oxidation, which are markers of damage that come from mitochondrial dysfunction. So oxidation, we can look at oxidized LDL. Inflammation, we can look at CRP, C-reactive protein. And then lastly, with glycation, blood sugar damage, we can look at hemoglobin A1C. That is a really good marker as well. So those three collectively, I can tell you how likely you are to have these disease states and how your metabolic function is and mitochondrial function is. Another good one, cardiovascular health, is not, I repeat, not cholesterol, total cholesterol, HDL, LDL. Those are terrible markers, very poor correlation. Some of it, I could go down a whole show
I'm so glad
on this.
we talked about it. Yes.
But anyway, lipoprotein A is a way better marker to measure cardiovascular health. So that is the one that I would use. And it's fine to look at cholesterol if you're diving into the subfractions using an NMR or VAP test. But total cholesterol, LDL, HDL is very misleading and very poorly correlated to cardiovascular health. If anything, I could argue that the higher your total cholesterol is, the longer you will live on average. So it's a very poor marker. So those are some things that would be great to look at. Also, on a wearable, I have the Oura Ring here. Some people have the Garmin watch or BioStrap or Whoop Strap, or there's a number of these things. Yeah. And you can track not only your sleep quality, your oxygen saturation, your heart rate. But very importantly is heart rate variability. And that is a marker of your resilience and recovery. And so the higher that your heart rate variability is, the better. And so that's a great one to track.
I really like to get that checked and also to get the instant feedback, because you can practice a quick hypnosis or practice a quick meditation and see in real time how that affects your HRV. And I find that quite extraordinary. That's perhaps the nerd in me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the idea of vagal toning is something to look at. The vagus nerve is what helps put you into that parasympathetic, that rest and digest state with your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system. So vagal toning, there's a number of things you can do, as you suggested, meditation, prayer, grounding, just walking outside barefoot, sun gazing, forest bathing, humming, actually,
yes.
and massaging the roof of your mouth with your tongue. There's, and then breath work, obviously. I like to do box breathing, which is very simple, like 4 to 8 second box breath, where you, let's say if we were to do a quick one, a
Let's
6
do it,
second
Shawn.
box.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it together.
So,
take me with
so
you on this
closing
journey.
your eyes. Yeah, closing your eyes. Imagine someplace beautiful that's a kind of relaxing space for you. Some people it's the mountains. Some people it's the beach. Go to your happy place. Get grounded. Relax the body. Relax the mind. Quiet the noise. You're going to breathe in for 6 seconds. You're going to hold for 6 seconds. Breathe out for 6 seconds and then hold. And that's the box. And you're going to do it all through your nose. So let's breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Hold. And done. That's one box. I usually do 4 in a row. I love to start a meeting like this with my team. It gets everyone in sync. You can kind of check the stress at the door. And I really feel like there's an idea of coherence in terms of the mind and in terms of the heart.
Yes.
That if you can do these kinds of things, that we can be in coherence, and literally heart rhythms will sync up, brain rhythms will sync up. Our body is electric, and we will sync up if we allow it. And then there's less of that kind of dissonance, right?
Yes.
So it's very powerful to do.
So much so that scientists called the breath work, whereby you breathe 6 to 7 breaths per minute, coherent or resonance breathing, because of the coherence impact it has on our body. So there is a real science behind this.
Absolutely.
Yes, resonance breathing is my go-to. I love it so very much. I like to do an inhale for 4 and an exhale for 6. So I bring myself to a nice count. It feels really good.
Yeah. The longer exhale, there's so many things that you can explore, and breath holds and all that kind of stuff. And then it's really interesting. You can look at like CO2 tolerance and your capacity to hold CO2. That has a very powerful effect to train your body to have greater capacity for CO2 over time. It'll help oxygenate the body. It'll help you be more relaxed in kind of stressful scenarios. So it's powerful.
It is. Shawn, I was wondering if we could almost reverse the energy formula, meaning I know you have this extraordinary formula to how we can optimize our energy. Before we go there, can you tell us what are the things that we do lifestyle-wise to actually really damage our energy? So before we talk about the solution, what are the problems?
Yeah, in the book I go through, so if you back up and you look at the mitochondria, and yes, it produces the cellular energy currency, ATP, but the mitochondria itself uses NAD as fuel to make ATP. So for the mitochondria, like there's always like a fuel source in anything that happens metabolically. So, NAD becomes that critical thing. And when we look at what lowers or depletes NAD, it's not going to surprise you. It's going to be the things that are quite obvious for our health. And it's going to be, chronically undersleeping. It's going to be stressful situations, poor diet, junk lighting, toxic environments in terms of chemicals, but even certainly toxic relationships. Alcohol, especially chronic alcohol, especially late in the day, really impairs circadian rhythm. I would encourage like anyone that if you do want to partake in alcohol, have it earlier in the day.
Combine have vodka for breakfast.
Well, that is better. Like the idea of day drinking is much better to allow your body to clear it, especially like drink water, maybe interspersed between the drinks and then certainly after. But have it earlier in the day. Late in the day really disrupts circadian rhythm badly. And anyone who tracks sleep or HRV, knows that very well. Same with actually eating very late. You don't want to eat too late. It does make sense to kind of eat with the daylight to follow your circadian rhythm. This is like Sachin Panda's work is all around this. And so you might have a shorter eating window during the winter, a longer eating window during the summer. But I try and stick to only eating during the daylight hours and, cutting that food off 2-3 hours before bed. Like 3 hours is more ideal.
Mm-hmm. How much do you practice intermittent fasting and how important do you think it is to optimize our energy?
I think here's the thing with intermittent fasting. I do like the idea of it, especially for women. I think extended fasting is not ideal for women that are premenopausal, that are, like for fertility matters, being fertile matters, like that. Some of the, kind of intense ketogenic diets or extended fasts can be tough on a woman's physiology in a way that just is not representative of the male physiology. It's just a fact of what we're seeing. And, you are meant to, in your fertile years, maintain a life. And there's just different needs, and our physiology is different in that way. So I do think that if you want to explore fasting, doing intermittent fasting as a woman who is in the premenopausal years, I think postmenopausal, like you can kind of, do more extended fasting. But I do think intermittent fasting can work along those lines. But that said, I think the most powerful place to start is just not snacking. That is the most important intermittent fasting you can do, is just don't eat between meals. Start with that, and you can play with meal frequency. Some people do one meal a day, and that's very interesting. That is a form of fasting, of course. I love it. But you have to make sure that you're getting all the nutrition that you need in that one meal. And that can be a lot on the body. So, I typically believe that 2 meals a day is enough. I think spreading them out, not snacking between, I think that's really all you need. And you're going to be in a very healthy place. And then, there's a lot of exploration around like fasting mimicking, which, there's things like spermidine is a really interesting compound that upregulates autophagy and mimics the fasting effects. And yes, spermidine, it might sound crazy if you haven't heard of it. And it is found, yes, in fact, in sperm. But it is a polyamine, and it does have powerful effects on autophagy as well as mitophagy. So cleaning out the cell as well as the mitochondria. So a really powerful compound that we've been exploring in anti-aging.
I want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned female cycles or menopause, premenopause. Can we turn our attention to male and specifically talk about that very interesting period in a man's life between their 40s, 50s, when perhaps testosterone is starting to go down, energy is starting to
pause.
Yes. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because what I see happening a lot in my client around that age is energy level going down, anxiety level going up, a little bit of weight, especially around the belly area, a little bit less drive around workouts. Can you tell us about this and how can our male audience optimize their energy?
It's a really fascinating point, and I do think that high glycemic carbohydrate is playing a role. I do think stress is playing a role. I think when you're adulting, right? Like you're responsible for bills, you're responsible for all these different things, and you're maybe using alcohol, and you're not getting enough sleep, and you're not working out like you should. These kinds of things tend to accumulate by that age. And add to it, there's phytoestrogens that we're consuming in plants. There's xenoestrogens in the plastics, microplastics, and even nanoplastics that are in everything, our water supply, everything. It's very difficult to escape now.
Coffee cups.
If you study nanoplastics, it will be disturbing to you that they found them in clouds above Mount Everest. They've found them in craters. They've found them deep in the ocean. The degree to which plastics have invaded our environment as well as our cells is quite disturbing. But beyond that, there's metalloestrogens, and there's just all these estrogen mimicking compounds that are endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors, that are wreaking havoc on a man's testosterone. If we look back to like the 40s and 50s, so we're not talking about thousands of years ago, a man's testosterone was 1,000, 1,200, even 1,400 naturally. Now, when we look at our blood work, we see WNL, and that means within normal limits. That normal limits is not ideal or optimized. It's what's normal. And when society as a whole is suboptimal, then normal shifts. And so now we're hearing 200, 300, is okay. You're normal with testosterone. Well, meanwhile, it literally was dropping 200 points every decade. And this is a huge problem. Why do you think fertility is down and obesity is up and depression is up and, bone mineral density is down and, libido is down and performance? All these things are happening to men. And, on top of it, you can even get into the psychological component of, I feel like, a mass emasculation that's happening to men. Mm-hmm. Men are embarrassed to be men. We're told that everything that's masculine is toxic. And this is very confusing to men. And they feel beat up and they feel like they don't have a place. And at the same time, you're seeing women be masculinized in their roles and responsibilities. And it's leaving all of us very confused, very exhausted. We're residing, while I do believe that we all have masculine and feminine energies that we need to tap into. And I've done a lot of work in plant medicine and spirituality around that. I do believe it's nice to reside in your kind of ideal energy. And I think that women are exhausted from being in the masculine energy constantly. It's okay to be in it sometimes, but we're in it constantly. And men are not in their masculine constantly. And there's like this imbalance and confusion that's taking place, and it's leading to exhaustion. And, and it's playing out in relationships, and it's playing out in our roles and responsibilities to our children. And it's a very confusing time. that's kind of a deeper psychological, philosophical discussion. But, certainly I think our diet, our sleep, our stress, all of these things are playing out, and we're just not eating enough protein.
Yes.
We're having too many of these endocrine disruptors in our bodies. A number of the medications that we're taking are endocrine disruptors. Glyphosate is an endocrine disruptor, and it's sprayed over everything. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to escape these things the more you are in a Western world. And, that's why I enjoy being out in, Finland and some of these places where, you don't have to say organic food. It is organic food, that you can get whole, clean food that isn't sprayed with glyphosate. You can drink water that comes from a glass bottle instead of a plastic bottle. You can, it's encouraged to get sleep. It's encouraged to not work more than 40 hours a week. It's encouraged to actually take your vacation or spend time with your child when you just had a child, to take a year off, instead of here in the US, it's 6 weeks is almost egregious. And that's crazy. So there's just so much
you just
to say
created
there.
a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yes. I'm so glad that you've brought that up. Since we are on the topic of things that can affect our energy, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the rise of thyroid issues as well. What did you observe in your surrounding, in your clients, or globally, and what are things that could correlate with our energy, our thyroid health, and some practical things that we can do to maybe help our optimize our thyroid health?
Mm. So here's one hack. I'm a supplement guy. So
I know.
tyrosine is a really interesting supplement. It's an amino acid that you can find in proteins. But tyrosine, taking a little extra tyrosine can support the thyroid, producing thyroxine, but also it's a nutrient that will support production of dopamine. And that's that feel good chemical that, could replace your addiction to, to porn, to fast cars, to these foods, to doom scrolling on TikTok, or, all these kinds of things. So tyrosine, working out is going to be another one to keep your thyroid elevated, is keep your body moving. A body in motion stays in motion. So keep your body moving. When we look at the two most important determinants of longevity that aren't psychological, that we can just measure directly, it's actually muscle strength and maybe total muscle mass, because it's related to muscle strength, and VO2 max, which is your cardio respiratory fitness. So when we look at those are related to just moving and using your body. How well do you move and use your body as you age? And that's going to predict your health span, how long you stay healthy versus just lifespan, which a lot of us are living a long time, but we're not necessarily living healthy a long time. And, that can be a whole other discussion. But I think those things are really important. Again, getting quality sleep. Your thyroid needs to recover. And when we're on overdrive all the time, that's a recipe for the thyroid to be overwhelmed. So not just sleep, but also recovery, that self-care. So, getting that massage, getting that foot rub, getting your hair, nails done, or, doing that hobby that's relaxing for you, if it's gardening or, hiking, being out in nature. Certainly, we've seen the effect that nature has with this positive ionic impact, through the air, through the ground, just being out in nature, breathing fresh air, has a very relaxing impact. So anything that's going to support recovery is going to help the thyroid.
Do you think that as a society we are in a recovery deficit?
Very much, even though you could argue that we're fairly lazy. And this connects to the idea of we're distracted all the time. So we're never optimized for doing anything well. We're distracted, we're multitasking, where our brains are frenetically frazzled. We're confused, we're distracted. We're looking at our phones, we're looking at all the signs as we're driving, we're listening to music, someone else is talking, we're thinking about 10 different things. That's exhaustive to the brain. That uses way more ATP and it's not effective at all. We're actually not multitaskers. You've heard that women are better multitask. None of this is true. Multitasking is not a thing. It's called task switching. And it's exhaustive to the brain because we're switching back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this is why it's really effective to focus on one task, get that task done, clear it, and then go on to the next task. And so this is true in all aspects of our life. If we're going to be present with a loved one, family or an intimate experience, put the phone down, turn the TV off, keep the dog out of the room, whatever it is, just like focus, like be focused, be present. And you'll find that your testosterone is better, your thyroid's better, your oxytocin is better because you're deeply connecting, you're optimizing for an experience. And this is going to be true with your work, with your connection with people, with spending time with yourself. I mean, do you think meditation or thinking through maybe some problems that you have is going to be that effective when TV is on and the radio is on and you're in a crowded environment? No, it's going to be when you remove yourself, when you're focused, when you're able to go inwards, when you can go silent.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. So what I got so far is all that junk food detox, a lot of digital detox. That was really super useful, a lot more nature exposure. And perhaps to wrap us up, we can expand on one more form of detox that you've touched upon briefly, which was the junk light. Can we talk about that and how that affects our energy level? Because I know you know a lot about junk lights, and I think we still have so many folks out there that are not quite aware of how draining that junk light exposure can be.
Yeah, you're not getting like that full spectrum of light. One, like it's really interesting. So we're reading and learning about with research like red light and how healing and anti-inflammatory it is, and it's the light that you tend to get at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day. But we're also learning about, it's called chromotherapy, with all these other spectrums of light. Like green is actually related quite a bit to pain. So there's new research on green light reducing pain levels. And blue light is a good thing. First thing in the morning that we get that blue light and we get that wakefulness because it blocks the release of melatonin. And so we wake up and it turns on our circadian rhythm. So this is why it's not good to eat before we turn on that circadian rhythm, before we get exposure to the red and blue light. But when we're exposed to this junk light, this fluorescent light all day, every day, then we're not releasing melatonin when we should, and then blocking melatonin when we should. In the evenings, that light should be winding down. You should just be getting red light and not be getting the blue light anymore. And your circadian rhythm therefore knows when it can go in the right patterns to release certain neurotransmitters and certain hormones. When we're getting exposure to blue light when we shouldn't, then we're impairing those functions of the circadian rhythm and the proper release of hormones and neurotransmitters, as well as it's tied into everything. Our gut microbiome, our immune system, everything follows this circadian rhythm. So this light is truly impairing our health. So I would encourage you to, cut out the blue light in the evening, wear the blue light blocking glasses, try and change your bulbs to like, the more, the classic kind of filaments
orange
bulbs, like, or, a red or orange bulb, but you can even just get like those incandescent, old filament bulbs. Those are kind of nice, but certainly get away from that bright, you know, really bright blue light that's common with fluorescent lights and a lot of light that we tend to get. And just be careful when you're exposed to that, like wearing blue light blocking glasses. And, even when you get up in the evening, let's say to maybe go pee, when you turn on a light to go to the bathroom, that can disrupt your circadian rhythm there too. And it
Yeah.
could take an hour to get back to bed. And, so thinking through maybe having like a red light flashlight by the bed, or, something along those lines. Again, like going to the fridge, maybe late at night, that's a bright light. Those kinds of things are very powerful. And of course, avoiding laptops, tablets, cell phones, especially in a dark room where that bright light is being shined directly in your face. And I have the biggest concern when it comes to VR and these Apple Vision goggles and all this kind of stuff, where it's firing bright light directly into your retina. I feel
Yes.
like this is going to have a disastrous effect on humanity.
I am so glad you've raised that. And to go full circle with how we started our conversation today, I also believe, and I would love to hear your thought on whether you agree with that statement, that having all that bright fluorescent light in the evening can trigger sugar craving and all this wanting to snack. And actually, if you have more this amber, calming, dim light, you just don't have this surge of appetite and junk food craving. Have you noticed that in your experience as well? Or do you think this is just my own personal view?
No, that absolutely makes sense. And again, it's that circadian rhythm, and it's just the proper rhythm of life. And when we
That's right.
impair it, everything is impaired. That's that full disruption that takes place. Yeah.
I've also noticed that if I get my 15 minutes of natural light right upon waking up, that delays my appetite
Mhm.
significantly. So I get the natural light and then I'll have coffee and then I can really push back that lunchtime and effectively not have what you would call a conventional breakfast, maybe just, a bulletproof coffee or just a lot of mineral water. Whereas if I start my day and don't get that instant natural light exposure, I will feel more hungry more quickly.
That's amazing. Well, look at you.
Mm.
You got all the hacks.
Well, Shawn, you inspired me for most of them, so I'm very grateful for that. Shawn, it was quite an honor. I'll make sure to put your amazing book that you've so kindly given me a copy of in the show notes, because I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think our folks will enjoy it too. And is there one last word of wisdom you should share with us today to inspire us to optimize our energy and follow your energy formula?
My favorite one is a mindset one. It's just granting yourself grace, like allowing yourself to make quote unquote mistakes, changing that idea of even calling them mistakes, and think of life as a series of experiments, and just experiment, play, stumble into things. That's where all the wonder and epiphanies and serendipity lives, is in the mistakes, or as I say, the experiments.
Thank you, Shawn. I really appreciate that. Great to have you on the show, and I can't wait to see you again in Finland, hopefully.
Hey, see you
Where
soon.
water tastes good and food does not come out of plastic.
Agreed. I love being there.
Take care. Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.